I taken out my stopwatch because yesterday on the virtual, I tried to tell all you how life would be different if Kamala Prasad Bisesa and the UNC were in government, because sometimes you all need to hear it, how the decisions would have been made differently. I went for about 2 minutes and probably 26 seconds or so, but I missed out plenty. So I'm going to remind you, because right now, no one could have done worse than Keith Rowley in this COVID-19 pandemic, this war that we are losing. We are dying, we are suffering, we are starving, we are needy, we are not greedy, we are hungry. People are crying out, businesses are shuttered. They don't know where they're going to get money, stock, how they're going to kickstart, how they're going to start up. Over 41% of businesses will never open again. But Kamala Prasad Bisesa had a plan. She tried to tell you all, but they call a snap election in a pandemic with people saying we are #1 in the world, and the Guardian, Express, TV6, Newsday, CNC3, all the radio stations telling you all that. And enough of you all made the mistake in the marginals to dip your finger, while 30,000 people of intelligence were left outside of this country and were not allowed to vote. And Keith Rowley feels he's some kind of big superior prime minister on a 22-19, that he squeezed 2 seats in Tobago that we ain't so sure, with an EBC that is not independent, an EBC that has the niece of a former sitting cabinet minister of the PNM in it, and the best friend of a current sitting minister of bundles, and you all find that's okay. But I told you all, so Archie, remind them of the 2 minutes how COVID-19 would have been fought by Kamala Prasad Bisesa and the UNC with brain, with creativity, and life would not have sucked as it sucks now. Run it. If I know Madam President here, so I'm going to take an extra 2 minutes here today, because I want you all to understand that Kamala Prasad Bisesa, if she was Prime Minister, and our good coaches always walk with the stopwatch. I see Fenwick with one of these. Kamala Prasad Bisesa, if she was Prime Minister, the COVID-19 pandemic fight would have been different. Life in Trinidad and Tobago would have been different. Ready? Let me tell you why. Go! Because Kamala Prasad Bisesa had real doctors in her cabinet and MPs. She would have had the advice. She would have had the full debate and created a program. She'd have ensured that there was enough testing across the board so that we could have been testing all during Carnival and make sure there was contact tracing to either have a safe Carnival or cancel it based on the data. She would have ensured that the borders would have remained open for citizens to be repatriated under PAHO and World Health Organizations, while the borders, official borders, would have been closed to internationals, so that we would have kept our islands pristine. She would have ensured that the porous borders were locked. The Coast Guard would have had diesel, the helicopters, Air Guard would have been flying, the Army would have been from Fullerton to Icacos with jeeps and full floodlights. The police would have been out in roadblocks to lock down the place. Officials in Carnage and Chaguaramas, they would have stopped the Venezuelan fishermen from coming in with unchecked. There would have been health officials out there, customs and excise. The borders would have been sealed with a security dome. Then she would have ensured that the economy would have been moving. She would not have shut down beaches and rivers and outdoor activities. She would have ensured agriculture continues and that local products would have been sold. She would have ensured that we in Trinidad and Tobago would have kept the economy going so that jobs would have been able to continue. The money that she would have been given at grants would not have been $1,500. It would have been more realistic, up at $3,000. She would have created a system of public servants in warehouses to keep printing checks so that everybody, 200,000 people, because more people would have applied, because the forms would not have been so arduous. She would have printed out those checks and made sure that they were printed within 3 to 4 weeks. Everybody would have had their money. There would have been better management of the hospitals. The real doctors would have been in charge. She would not have put a convent girl in charge of the Ministry of Health. How much time? With the ministry, where the clock? She would have put real doctors and real specialists in the parallel health system. She would have purchased more ventilators, ensure there was more oxygen, ensure that the borders would not allow
illegal immigrants in to bring Brazilian variant. The small and micro businesses would have received their grants. NEDCO would have increased their loan facilities. She would not have taken out $23 billion in the heritage and stabilization and only used $425 million for the people. There would have been more accountability across the board. Sports and healthy lifestyle activities would have continued and been managed. We would not have been on lockdown, shutdown, and brought down with a state of emergency. The airports would have been monitored. There would have been antibody antigen testing. And Trinidad and Tobago would have been a bubble. Tobago would have kept separate and would have been in the bubble with Barbados so that we could have had tourism continuing. That, I think, is 2 minutes, but that is what Kamala would have done and lots more. There would have been more school feeding, more hampers, more money spent, more belief, more heart, more soul, more love. And she would not have told you that you're greedy. Good night.
Some. So let's go. That was about 3 minutes. Ready? Archie? Ready? Go. Kamala would have ensured that we reach herd immunity by April 2020. She would have begged for vaccine. She would have gone to meet Modi, call him, Zoom with Modi, get 400,000 from Modi. She would have ensured that she had meetings and send people and private sector to get Pfizer, to get AstraZeneca, to get Moderna, to get Johnson & Johnson. She would not have played games with Ansa McCall, 351,000 doses. She would have ensured we had vaccines. She would have ensured that when she delivering the vaccines, she would have vaccine taxi. She would have had people going to the homes of the elderly to give them vaccine without them coming outside. She would have had open drive-through vaccines like what happened at the army down there. Vaccination would have reached 70% by April. The economy would have been opened back up. Furthermore, she would have ensured that Trinidad and Tobago would not have shut down the schools, that our children would have already had laptops and tablets and Wi-Fi, and school would not have been eliminated for 48,690 children. There would have been exams, would have been held. The children would have been given Pfizer vaccine so that they could go back to school quickly, because online classes has its limitations. The children would have been first. She would have ensured that they got the 48,000 meals, not drop it down to 20,000. She would have ensured that foreclosures would have been stopped by the parliament. She would have gone to parliament and passed a law preventing banks from foreclosing on people, on their houses, their cars, their equipment, and so on, their businesses. She would have passed a law putting a moratorium on that legally so that banks could not do that. People would have been saved. They would have deferred interest payments. There would have been laws made to protect people. The banks and the private sector would have been told and instructed by law not to handle the situation. She would have prevented she would have said no VAT for companies trying to keep their employees on payroll. She would have given tax breaks for those who paid their employees a percentage of their salary even though business was not running. She would have given tax breaks across. She would have kept the beaches, rivers, and so on open and kept with social separation. People understand that COVID-19 does not live in salt water. With monitoring, with police, with army, and so on, keeping it safe, ensuring with education across the board on the spread. She would have not had press conferences every day to magai and play politics. She would have done a lot of road if the country had to go into a lockdown position depending on what the situation was. If there was a lockdown position, she would have taken the opportunity to keep construction going, to make sure that all the roads would have been paved, to ensure that the riverine unit would have been operationalized in March 2020, not April 2021, to protect the borders along with the Coast Guard. She would have accessed the IMF funding that does not have prescriptions, the emergency IMF funding for the people, and ensure that hampers, food, medicine, and all the amenities would have been given to the people. She would have ensured that the ministers of the cabinet took a 40% pay cut, that the public service hierarchy, the permanent and secretaries, and so on, the higher level AO5s and so on, took a 25% pay cut. The CEOs of state enterprises, Carl and all these who getting 46,000 US per month would have had to take 40 to 50% pay cuts in order to keep business going. She would have dredge the river mouth so that when the rains came, they would not be flooded. She would have had in the technology when the economy and the repatriation and the airports were open. She would have had contact tracing technology bracelets that check your, just like Barbados, that check your temperature, linked to your GPS phone, keep your quarantine venues. Kamala would have had more quarantine venues, not just selected friends and family. There would have been hotels open and the government would have paid. Citizens would not have had to pay for their own quarantine. Kamala would have requests from the USA to help us seal the borders. Why hasn't the government done that? Ask the USA to seal the borders. The USA is helping Guyana against Maduro, but when you're friendly with Maduro, you can't ask the US for naval and coast guard help. Kamala Persad-Bissessar would not have been friendly with Maduro. She would have called upon the USA to put naval vessels in that Gulf of Paria, put their radar, put their coast guard, and protect Trinidad and Tobago. What is as CARICOM chair, Kamala would have united the Caribbean. She would have led, and Holness, Mia Motley, Gaston Johnson, all of them would have fought for vaccines, for policies, for funding together as a unit, and would not have been one man going so and ignoring Rowley. Kamala would not have been ignored because she would have moved with a unity platform, and she would not have called an early election in a pandemic to be a super spreader. Kamala would not have invited all of our people and citizens to go to Tobago to spread Brazilian variant and kill Tobagonians. That's how life would have been different if Kamala Persad-Bissessar and the UNC was in government, governing with heart, soul, brain, intelligence, creativity, with people in different portfolios who know what they're doing, rather than a convent girl and a Shakespearean actor who should be painting a backdrop, and a Rowley, a dumb Doctor of Stones with arrogance who puts his PNM minions to keep us dying. We would not be dying. We would have specialist doctors handling it. We would have food, money, economy going, and Trinidad and Tobago would not be suffering for the next 15 to 20 years.